Don't you want to just guide it over?
Yeah, we could try that, but give them a little smoke. It just takes time. So just kind of get it.
Everybody made it. Oops.
Also, another thing is to make sure that your frames are sandwiched together in the middle. And it depends on where you get your boxes, because all boxes aren't the same, even though they're all 8 frame or 10 frame. Some have more space on the side. With these, I can put my finger in between. Again, the advantage is that using your hive tool, you can just break open the first frame and then pull it out, and then that gives you a lot more space. Whereas if you just kind of distribute them out, then it's hard to get out, because then the bees will
Make
really build super wide comb. So.
So one thing we want you to know is Varroa is probably the most devastating pest to honeybees. That attributes to more of the colony loss worldwide than anything else you're going to hear of. There are different ways to control Varroa. One thing we're going to talk about is the mechanical control, which is a drone comb removal. And drone comb removal can be either through a foundation, a specific green foundation, because it has a larger cell that the bees will build a cell wall with the wax with, or literally you can put a frame in there that's the size of a medium, and the bees will make a longer cell wax on there, and then you can just take it off and take it away. So these green ones you probably have seen and had no idea what they're for. These are actually the drone comb foundations and frames. They have a larger cell than the typical ones that you put in your frames. The reason they're green is so you realize those are the bigger ones, which can serve 2 purposes. If you want to, you can actually use these in honey supers for bigger cells for honey as well. But in this case, they're specifically for drones. You would put them in the number 2 spot in your boxes. So here's a medium, here's a deep in here. One thing to know, if you don't have these cells, you can use a medium frame and it will do the same thing. So as you can see here, you have that extra gap. So the bees will actually start to build another layer of wax, which then they will use for the drones, because drones are typically on the bottom of the frames. And then when you pull that out, you can literally snap it off or scrape it off, and you can put it in your freezer to kill any of the mites, and then take it out in a couple of days and feed it to your chickens, or just completely discard it. Or you can just give it to your chickens. The one thing you risk though of just taking it fresh out and not freezing it ahead of time and giving it to your chickens is if they're exposed, the mites are hitchhikers. So they can literally hitchhike onto something else and move on and get a ride back to your bees. So putting it in, just slide it in. That's it. A couple weeks later, pull it out. There you go. And theoretically, these will be all your drones here or all your drones here. And remember, the mites feed off of fat bodies. And because drones take 24 days versus 21, these are more scrumptious. And so we're going to use Formicro now as a form of mite control. The Formicro is more of the organic side of it, of a chemical control. And these are safe for the honey supers. So if you have your honey supers on already, you can add those. If you are going to be adding your honey supers on within a month, you can use this also. It's in effect, it is an effective treatment. They kind of look like pollen patties in there. You do need to have gloves on there. The strong is really the smell is really strong, similar to like a vinegar smell. So you can use a respirator if you want, but I wouldn't say it's necessary, but you should use gloves always with doing any mite treatment. So you will pull it out of a package. It will come in 2 strips like this, and you will just lay them on. You can do it in 2 different treatments. You can do 1 treatment with 1 patty and for 1 to 10 days, and on the 11th day, you would replace it with another patty, or you can do 2 strips and leave it on for the 14 days. So you just take it off, put it 1 here, 1 here. You don't really necessarily need to pay attention to where the bee's on there. So I generally put them kind of in the middle, 1 up and 1 down. Set your lid on there and leave the bees. If one thing to note is you do need ventilation for this. So if you don't have a 1/2 inch ventilation on your front entrance, you do need to increase that ventilation. You can just put some little shims in there to lift it up. You can put some ventilation in here as well. And one thing to note on these is that if there is not the ventilation, you could kill your queen or kill your brood. And that also goes into where the temperature, you need to be between 55 and 85 degrees for that. If it gets too hot, that can cause disruption in your hive. And you don't want to start out trying to do a good thing and then find out you kind of messed it up. Next, we have hot guard as another form of Varroa treatment. This would be more considered on your organic side. It has beta hops in there. These definitely require gloves. All treatments require gloves, but this is going to be your messiest form of treatment in here. These can be used with honey supers, and the temperature needs to be above 50 degrees. So it's a good substitute if you're thinking between this and the Formic Pro. Either one is fine. Just to realize that, again, no treatment is good all the time. You have to rotate your treatments. So I would use this in the springtime. You're going to open it up and it's going to pull out these cardboard strips that are coated with the chemical. Set it aside. It looks like that. It can be dripping with it. So that's why we say use your gloves. I usually have paper towels handy also. And it's basically a strip that opens up like this. You don't separate the strip. The purpose is to rest it in between. So you're going to use this 1 of these per every 5 frames of bees, and it's a 2-week treatment. Again, once you pull it out, you'll just gently rest it in there and set it in there. And you would do another one just like you do with all of them, just staggered, and put that in there. Put your bee space back in to make sure they're secure. Have some gloves ready to wipe your hands, and that's it. Put your lid back on. And basically the bees will chew it and it will toss it out themselves, or you will then replace or take out the treatment. It's up to you. This is actually not one of the treatments that you have to worry that I forgot to take it out. So that's a good thing about this product. Next, we have Athavar as a form of Varroa mite control. The chemical ingredient is amitraz. This is your chemical treatment. The treatment in here is about 4 to 6 weeks, and you're going to treat based on the number of frames of bees you have. So you'll, these definitely, you're going to need your PPE and your gloves on that. So you will open it up. The treatments look like these. They have little levers right there for you to hang on. They come up in 2 because it's meant 1 per 5 frames of bees. So you'll just get it and you'll tear it in half. Sometimes it's a little easier. There you go. And the same placement as you would put Formic Pro, you would just put them in the middle and separate them in your hives. So like that. They do have little holes in them. So if you wanted to, you can secure them down with the tack. But basically, you're not going to be going in your hives once you do treatment. So you probably don't need to worry about that. But I do recommend that you flip that tab up a little bit and put it in there. One thing to note is on here is if you're using the telescoping lid, is when you would think about maybe securing it down a little bit more firmly. And it's just because it will pops up like that and it pops the lid up a little bit. If you are, excuse me, the migratory lid. If you have the telescoping lid, you just set it right down on top and it's no problem at all. And you just set it down like that. And again, you're not going to go into your hives once you've done your treatment until the treatment is completed itself. Amitraz is great. You can use it year round and it's safe at all temperatures. However, you cannot use it when you're using honey supers. So if honey supers are going to be anywhere involved in your plan during whatever season it is, you can't use it. So you really want to think when. I would suggest you start to use it maybe in August, once you've done all your honey extraction as part of your fall treatment.
That's it.
So I'm just looking here. So Steve had an interesting comment about only using half dosages of Formic Pro. So I'm just typing a comment back in here. Yeah, I think Formic Pro assumes a 10 frame hive. And since a nuke is only 5 frames, it makes sense to only use a half dosage.
Yeah, I just had a five frame nuke, and I put the full dose 2 strips on, and I thought, oh, afterwards, that makes sense. I probably could have just gotten away with 1.
And you probably run the risk of killing your queen. That's the biggest problem with Formic Pro is it's very hard on queens. So
Arthur, did you want to go into what do we have? Nectar flow, honey supers, and overall colony health?
Yeah. So the purpose of tonight's meeting is for those of you who are interested in trying to extract some honey in the coming months, the things to look for. So as we were showing in the video, the first thing you need to have honey is you need lots of bees. And then on top of lots of bees, you actually have to have a nectar flow going on. And if you can manage those two, then you should have a pretty good honey crop. So first thing is to assess that you actually have a good population of bees. So at a very minimum, you'd want a single deep, at least 80% full before you super it. If you would like to use an excluder, you can. The advantage is that you keep a little protein out of your honey because you keep the queen trapped in the lower box because of the spacing in the excluders she can't pass through. So they won't lay any eggs in the super, so they're just going to store nectar and eventually you'll have just capped honey in your super. Again, the real takeaway is that normally you would need to have a really good nectar flow in order to have any kind of decent honey production. So it really depends. Some people live in residential areas where people are always watering their gardens or their lawns and flowers, and they're able to harvest a lot of honey. But if you're out in the country and everything's sort of drying up at this time of year and your bees really aren't bringing in a lot of nectar, then you're probably going to see less nectar and less honey in your hives. We touched on colony health. The only thing that I would add to what Sara was saying is I personally like Formic Pro, especially if you're putting supers on your hive, because it's a little stronger, and the advantage to that is over the hop guard, which is also safe for supering your hives, is that if there are mites in capped cells, Formic Pro has been shown to have a pretty good effective rate of eliminating mites that are in and cap cells. So it's a little better in that regard than say HopGuard, but those are the two chemical methods that you can use. The only other point that I would mention, I don't know if anyone out there harvests or attempts to harvest pollen, but HopGuard and Formic Pro are safe to use if you're harvesting pollen. Do not use Apivar at the same time that you're harvesting pollen because it's actually toxic to humans. So you could get Apivar or Amatraz, which is the active ingredient. You could get Amatraz mixed in with your pollen. So that's a big no-no. We talked about this in the video. If anybody's got any questions about laying queens, as we were saying in our inspection, as soon as you see eggs, you know that your colony is queen right. So you're after you establish that the colony's queen right, just sort of determine from the last time that you inspected that same hive, have you seen any growth? Because again, it's a numbers game. You need lots of bees to go out and forage to bring back nectar to the hive if you're hoping to get a decent amount of honey. If your colony is less than say 80% full in a single box, then I would recommend that you wait and first focus on getting the population in your hive up before you consider trying to super it for honey, because the thing that a lot of people make when they're first starting out as beekeepers, they put on a super too early. The bees store all of their resources up top, and then it looks like there's a lot to take, and you could accidentally take too much, and then going into the harder summer months, your bees can actually starve to death. So it's really important to make sure in that mix of lots of bees that in the boxes below the excluder that you're also seeing food frames. So you should see a mix of pollen frames and then nectar and honey frames in your brood box. So on the very sides, you should see a couple of frames.
And furthering what you said, Arthur, I think also if your colony is not have the population and you add the super prematurely, it gives you the false sense that you have a really strong and healthy hive when you may not have one.
Let's see, what else? Again, touching on disease and mites, it's not uncommon. It's happened to me several times. Going into summer, you'll have a great hive. It's really, really productive. The brood's doing really, really well. But if you don't control your mites, the success of a hive, in other words, the growth and the population that you see in your hive is also one of the things that presents a perfect breeding ground for mites. So if you're not controlling your mites at the same time that your growth curve is going up, you're going to have problems just a few months down the road. And that's, I don't know if anyone else in the audience has had that happen, where you have this great hive, lots of honey, and then you go in and then all of a sudden there's no bees. Well, it's probably that you had a high enough mite level, they transmitted some viruses to your bees, and that knocked out your bees. So do something. It doesn't have to be a chemical approach to treating the mites, but if you use all of those different methods together, you'll probably have a really good system for controlling your mite levels in your hive. And there isn't really eradication in the sense of you're never going to put chemical in or do any type of mechanical manipulations like drone comb, where you're going to absolutely reduce a level to zero. That's just something that in modern day beekeeping just won't happen. But you can maintain your mite levels under a safe threshold. That is very doable. Let's see, what else should we? That's about all I have. Sarah, did you have anything else to add?
No, I think the one thing that we wanted to just come across again, and I know we say it at every meeting though, is doing nothing is not a good recipe. You have to do something. We've all heard of colony collapse, and basically colony collapse nowadays is directly related to Varroa. And a strong, healthy hive can be decimated from Varroa from not being treated within a matter of months. So your strong, healthy hive, like Arthur said, now will be gone before the overwintering, or will be gone during the overwintering process. So it's just key to know. And not everybody is comfortable with doing Varroa mite checks, meaning a sugar shake or an alcohol wash. It's just something that we're going to show you to do in our June class. You can look them up. I think the best source for Varroa information is the Honeybee Health Coalition website. They have videos on how to do all those chemical treatments, and it's quick and easy, so it's not going to kill you. They're short videos. And also they have the Varroa decision-making tool on there. So if you know you have Varroa, and it will help you figure out which tool is best for you. But sometimes that can be hard to comprehend. That's why we decided to put it together quickly and say that Formic Pro and HopGuard is perfect for this type of season, because HopGuard especially because it's the temperature as we get into the warmer weathers, and because it's safe for the honey supers. And the Apivar is good for the fall because your honey supers are gone. And then for those of you that are familiar with oxalic acid, you can use that in your winter when there is no brood growth. But just like we said, also, if you're not comfortable with using any kind of a chemical treatment, whether it be synthetic or organic, there are the other ways meaning the drone comb removal or the screen bottom boards. But you should just be aware that you're going to have this problem, and how do you account for it? Because it's going to break your heart when it comes to January, when you open your hives over the overwintering and you realize there's no more bees in there. And you might think the bees just left because they wanted to go somewhere else. But that's when also, if you have bees and then you find that you don't have bees, ask somebody in the GBA to come look at your hive, because you'll know really from your foundations and frames of bees of what were there, of what was wrong. So you can tell based on that if you had a spotty pattern or poked holes that you most likely had a Varroa problem. Aside, the other problem could have been starvation, but starvation you can kind of tell because bees will actually still be there, and they'll be look like they're kind of frozen in time. We just want to stress to you to treat your bees. There are the treatment-free ways and the chemical ways, and we just want you to be familiar with that and comfortable. Does anybody have any questions or thoughts to add from that, or experience?
Hi,
Oh,
so
but-
I'm Penny, and I had rose my hand. I wasn't sure how we do it here.
Oh,
Hi,
yeah, that
Penny.
works.
Great presentation. Thank you so much. I have never treated for mites at all in my hives. I've been beekeeping for about 3 years, and I've lost some hives, and I'm not sure if it was the moth beetles or probably mites. So I would like to start treating based on this presentation. And so where do you purchase this stuff? Do you order it online, or do you go to Chicks and Bees, or where do you get it?
Man Lake sells it. Dadont sells it.
Okay,
A lot
Man
of
Lake.
the bee supplies sell it. Sam's, I'm not sure, Randy or Arthur, do you know, do they have on hand? Sometimes they don't keep those treatments on hand because of expiration.
Yeah.
I don't know, but you can even buy some of these through Amazon, but Amazon is going through Man Lake or
Yeah.
Dadont, but you can look it up on Amazon. If that's
I've
easier.
ordered from Man Lake before, so I can order from there again. Yeah.
And I can say in my personal experience now, Man Lake is fast again, and Dadont is slow. So
Oh, interesting.
yeah, it kind of reversed all of a sudden. But and if you only have like a couple hives, because
Which
I
I
forget how they Arthur, Randy, or anyone else can what the treatments come in how many packs. You can buy in bulk, or you can buy a pack of 10, right?
I believe so.
Appivar, the smallest is 10 strips.
10 strips. So, yeah. And
Yeah,
and
so-
some of these say the expiration, they're gonna expire. I will keep my stuff in the packaging and put in a Ziploc bag and seal it up and keep it in the garage in a dark environment. And I will use it until I've used every last piece versus going, oh, they said it was not good anymore.
Mhm.
And I think Arthur has used his also.
Is it expensive?
It can be. It can be. I think
It's
I'd have to
not
look it
cheap.
up right now. Yeah. So you might want to also ask, someone in the GBA, does anybody have anything extra that they're not using? And you can split the cost that way. If you, but you think about it, is it expensive? Maybe expensive, maybe $10 a hive to treat versus having to replace a whole new hive?
Appivar is around $5 per treatment.
Mhm.
Formic, I think, is around the same.
Yeah, I don't think it's terribly expensive
Yeah.
depending on if you're buying in bulk or not, but if you're gonna look at cost to treat versus cost to replace, it's way more economical to treat.
I just tried to comment earlier, but muted myself, which may be for the better. Anyway, I put up a link on the chat for going to Honeybee Health Coalition to look at their instructions about applying Formic Pro. And once you're in the site, you can go and look at all their applications for the other treatments as well.
Yeah.
I think the
And-
overall thing I always say is, because you have the treatment-free people, and I appreciate them, but at the end of the day, yes, when you treat, you're going to kill a few bees, but you're going to save tens of thousands of bees in your hive by treating. These treatments are meant to kill bugs. Your bee is a bug. Proper application will kill the mites, which are bugs, and save the majority of your bees, which are bugs.
Mhm. And there are some natural beekeeping ways, like you'll probably come across people that fog their bees through essential oils. You can do that too. It's just that there aren't studies really on the effectiveness on it, but some people really swear by it. So you're going to work what works in your IPM, again, the integrated pest management. All we can do is say that you're going to run across this problem. It's a guarantee. And because the mice are phoretic, they're hitchhikers, they go on anything that they can, that's available to them. So it's best that you just become educated and aware.
And you have to try it to learn.
I have two questions. Can I ask?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So one question is, I was told by somebody you can use oxalic acid, or you should use. He said you should use oxalic acid from June to October every week on your hive, and I'm not sure if I have like super, should I still be able to use it? And the second question is, how do you communicate within the GBA community?
Could you repeat your second question? I couldn't hear it. I'm sorry.
Sorry, the second question is, how do you communicate between the GBA community, among the GBA community members? I mean, I'm new, so I don't have any email address or, anything. That's why.
Oh, that's excellent. Normally, I think generally people email and Randy handles it, but we do have a Facebook page, and we actually encourage people to add onto that Facebook page and add questions, because we'd really like to make that a greater community.
Okay,
Well
sure.
said.
I'll follow that one.
We actually have two Facebook pages. We have a journal page and we have a membership page, which currently at this point is open to people. Yeah, if you're getting newsletters, if you're getting invites, if you go to the bottom of the page, you'll see the linkages that you can click on, whether it's Twitter, whether it's Instagram, whether it's either of our Facebook pages. It's a link to our website where you can go to the contact link in the menu. So there's at least 5 or 6 different ways that you can communicate with us.
Also, to answer your question about the use of oxalic acid, the methods that have been shown to be most effective are either the oxalic acid drip, where you're dripping the oxalic acid over the tops of the frames, or the oxalic acid where you're putting it into a shop towel and then laying the shop towel over the brood area. Fogging, the difficulty with fogging is that in order to get any kind of decent mite kill, the frequency at which you would have to fog just doesn't make sense for most people. In tests that Randy Oliver was doing, he was saying that he got very, very low mite loss rates, even fogging as often as once every 10 days. So that's a lot of work, fogging your hive once every 10 days, because you need personal protective equipment before you can go out and actually use. You need a respirator. It's complicated to use oxalic acid in a fog. So,
And also I would say I use oxalic acid, and I use that in the late fall, winter. And it's a very good treatment to do when you're not opening up hives. So
yeah.
you can fog them that way while they're still in there without coming out. But I've actually never heard of it being used during this time of season, because then it goes, you think it has to go back into the honey super section of the food safety part of it.
And
Although there was a recent ruling or a paper on oxalic acid and its allowability in the wax.
Yeah, I don't think oxalic has been approved for use with honey yet. At least not in California.
If I recall correctly, I think Randy Oliver's studies said that oxalic acid really wasn't effective in the spring and summer because it doesn't do anything to the capped brood. And really, it was only effective in the winter when there was very little capped brood.
Exactly. Good comment.
Yeah, it says on the honeybee health. Sorry, Sandy, on that honeybee health coalition, it tells you it's 82 to 99% effective when there's no brood. So that goes into the dormant phase, which would be that overwintering time.
We have
Sorry,
a question
Sandy, go
on
ahead.
chat. We have a question on chat from Tracy and Aiden. They want to know, are cannolian bees good for our area?
Alive bees are the best bees that you can have. So
Yeah.
if you can keep carniolans or Italians or Russians or Africanized bees alive in your apiary, those are the best bees that you can have.
Well, I'm not sure about
But
Africanized.
African are not allowed.
Oh, those are fun. Everybody likes getting stung.
African are now called overly defensive, and they are not allowed in this area. But yeah, they're all good. So they're all good, and they all have their characteristics. Some characteristics are swarming, tendencies to swarm or not, but we have found out they're all going to swarm what they want to.
Personal experience with carniolans is that in the summer they build up like crazy, but then in the fall it seems like they just crash because the queen will, as soon as it gets cold, will really stop producing. But that's not to say that it's a bad hive, because they just build up really, really quickly. So I've had good experiences with them in the past.
I guess what I would offer is that it's like plants. You want diversity. So Heinz 57 hives to me are the best. If I go into my hive and I look and I see carniolans, I see saskataz queens, I just see this variety of all kinds of bees that don't look the same, and it's like it's like going to the pound or going wherever you're looking at animals and there's just all kinds of animals, or you go to the garden and you look and you see all kinds of different plants. Diversity is good, and that's what you're really striving for, getting diversity. So I don't think it's any one bee that's the best. It's that diversity that you're really striving for, and that's what's going to give you the strongest chance of success. Other questions? So we have a few minutes here. Do we want to do around the room and see how everybody's doing with their bees? Let's do it. Let's start with Kurt. You're nodding. You're first.
Okay. I've got 5 of the hives that are doing pretty well. I ended up having one hive that had a laying worker problem. And I took them and I dumped them out about 20 feet from the hive and tried to see if I could introduce some frames of brood and see if they'd create a new queen. But their numbers got so small that the wax moths hit them and I had to take everything and put it in the freezer. So I'm starting over. I've started with a walkaway split on that hive about a week ago. So we'll see.
Good.
But the rest is going well.
Good. Good. Jerry?
The weather's miserable over here. It's foggy, cold, and wet. It sucks. So bees are not doing very much at all. Nothing's going on. I can't get anything to grow. It's so
You're over in
foggy and wet.
Hollister. You're over in Hollister, aren't you?
No, aromas.
Aroma. Oh, okay.
I'm on the other side of aromas. I actually party in the Pajaro Valley. It's been nothing but fog and rainy. I've been collecting rainwater. That's
Good,
about it.
that's good.
Everything's slow building. Anyway. Not much foraging. I built a new tub. I took a bathtub and put a bunch of cork in it and got a little solar pump. So the bees are starting to go there for water. That's something new. That was fun. So that's it for me.
Okay. Yeah, I went down to Salinas and I had to go buy aromas the other day, and man, it was drizzling. And yeah, so I know exactly what you're talking about. Ugly. But summer's almost here.
Yeah, right.
The way I look at it is when it's 95 degrees and there's forest fires and smoke, we're going to look back on these days and we're going to think these were the good times.
Yep, I agree.
Anyway. Steve? Steve Mink? Hello, Steve.
Yep, I've got 2 hives and they're still growing. Yep, I've got 2 hives. They're still growing.
Good.
Went from a 5-frame nuke, probably up to 6 now in each of the 2 hives. And have been feeding them and so just staying positive.
Good, good. Let's see. Mike and John, how are you doing with your 12 hives?
We still have 12.
Good.
And it has been kind of cold and wet here. Today was beautiful. The bees were flying. We actually went through all 12 hives. This is week 5 for us. We started with 3-pound packages and we have 4 to 5 frames now. Does that sound reasonable? We are feeding. They have sugar water most of the time. We feed them and then they may go a few days without, and then we start feeding again. We're coloring it. So we see there's a lot of color, a little bit of nectar coming in naturally, a lot of pollen. We're seeing a lot of pollen. So queens are laying. Does that sound normal?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, that sounds good.
sounds
Okay,
right on track.
thank you.
Yeah, good job. Let's see. Who shall I pick on next? Carol Munn, how are you?
Hi, how are you?
Good.
I have 3 hives and let's see, one that I split about 2 months ago. I just added a second brood box to it, to the original one that got the new queen because I moved the queen. And I'm feeding them all. Sometimes they will go a day or 2 on their own because they're gobbling it down so darn fast. But otherwise, they look pretty good. They seem to be expanding out. So I just removed Hop Guard from 2 of the hives a couple days ago. So looks stable, I think.
Good. Good. That's good news.
Yeah.
Mark Harrison, we haven't seen you for a while. You still have bees? How are they doing?
Yeah, well, I have 12 hives thanks to Art, and they're all doing well. I do have a question. We put Apivar in, and Art put the date on there of 5/31. After that date, I'm assuming I take those strips out.
Yes. And then you could try, for example, you could try one of the methods that Sara talked about. You could try like the drone frame for a while, and then probably think in next month or so, looking to see how your bees are doing, and then maybe treating again, say end of June, if you want to do some other type of chemical, like Hop Guard would be good because Formic Pro is too temperature sensitive to use during the summer months. But Hop Guard 3, I've talked to some people who've used it and they're pretty happy with it. So you might want to think about using that.
So if I pulled the Apivar out, do I give the bees any rest, or do I just go ahead with a Hop Guard?
No, I would give them a break. So if you pull it out at the end of this month, give them a break, say, and then put something in at the end of June.
Or the other thing you might do is a mite wash to see where you are at
Yeah.
your mite levels after you take the Apivar out.
Okay. And I'm not feeding because I noticed that they're really active, and it looks like we have quite a bit of food in and around our area out here. So I'm wondering what other people, how their bees are doing in, for producing without feeding.
I'm just down the road from you, and there's a lot of pollen, a lot of nectar, so I don't feed at all.
Yeah, that's what I'm seeing too for my bees. The other thing I'm seeing is a lot of competing other types of bees, species like bumblebees, carpenter bees, and a smaller kind of fuzzy version that I don't recognize, but they're not like carnulans or Italians or Russians. They're a funky looking, like a shorter, stubbier, fuzzy bee.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of them I've got a lot of trees out here, and they're on that. And so I'm kind of just wondering what the production is like for most people on their hives, like, and what I'm getting at is when do I start supering, and I'd also kind of like to split if I could.
Well,
I've already-
if you split, you're not going to super.
Understood.
But-
But the question is too, so for example, if we go into a dearth in the middle of the summer or whenever, do I start feeding then? And how do you tell? Do you look for the bees coming in like now and see whether or not they got pollen on their legs and that kind of thing?
I think if you're anticipating a dearth, do an inspection, look at how many frames of nectar you have. And then if you see that go into decline, then you definitely need to feed your bees. So let's, for sake of argument, let's say you have 2 frames of nectar and you see that go down to 1.5, then I would recommend feeding.
And
Because
how often?
they're going to go through their resources too quickly, and that's kind of like one of the main issues. It's that counterbalance. you want the strong population, but at the same time, bees are about efficiency. So if you don't have the food in the hive to support that strong population, either the queen is going to start or slow down laying because of the lack of incoming food, or the population will just continue to decline because there's not enough food coming in to keep up the nutrition levels in the hive.
When does the dearth start? Is there like an approximate date?
I think it's just like what Court was saying. You know, you guys, you live in a pocket where there's lots of trees. You've got eucalyptus trees around your neighborhood, lots of flowers. So it varies from area to area. There's other people, you know, they're surrounded by fields, and there's not a lot to forage on.
I didn't see a dearth until October last year.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's fantastic.
How often do you check your hives?
I look at them like once a month, but mostly I just look at the opening. You know, if I see the pollen going in and there's a lot of traffic, then everything's good. But you know, the blackberries are just now starting to open, and we've got that whole Lion Creek running along Day Road. There's blackberries for miles.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I wonder where the heck they're going to, because they take off. But there's a lot of activity out here.
Yeah.
Well, I'm hoping this year to actually make it through the winter. So my goal is to make it through the winter with most of my bees. I do have tremendous success with our honey out here. Last year, even though I lost all my hives, I still produced over 125 pounds of honey.
Wow.
So I had colony collapse, and I treated, by the way, with mineral oil. And but then again, you know, I don't know if it was part of that or that didn't work, or the fires or other, you know, but I'm assuming that because I didn't treat with Hopguard or Apivar that I had Varroa infestation, because it just toward the end of the year, around October, November, they all were gone.
Yeah, but Mark, as I recall, one of the problems you had was robbing. In some of the videos
Yeah.
you shared, where you had huge robbing. So
Right.
you need to be thinking about that and thinking about reducing your hive entrances and how you're going to protect the bees.
Well, I got reducers now. I didn't put it on all of them, but I have enough for everybody. So I may be doing what Mike Phillips said, which is putting in a hive reducer with the drilled holes, so that it's like one at a time. But right now there's no robbing. There's just a lot of activity. So I'm going to let them have a free for all and really try to build the hives up.
There's a lot of drought this year, so be aware. Everyone should be aware that robbing could start earlier this year because of this is it's the second year of severe drought. So resources are going to be challenged, and we need to be aware that, you know, the bees are going to be foraging wherever they can, whether it's other hives or other people's hives. So be alert. Let's move on. Penny, how are your bees doing?
I think they're doing great. I caught a swarm about a month ago. I'd never done that before, and I just did it. My husband took a video as I was doing it. They just came to a fence post near the other hive, and they stayed there. So I took them and put them in a box, and they're staying. So that's good. I gave them a pollen patty. Carol was nice enough to give me a couple pollen patties, so I was able to give them some pollen right away. And I took a frame from my other hive of pretty sure it was just honey. I'm not so good at figuring out what's in the frames, and I gave it to that new hive also, and so they have food. They seem to be doing really well. And then my other hive, I put a second honey super on it about a month ago also, because the other one was getting full, and I thought, well, I'll just add another one and see how it goes. So yeah, I'm going to be cautious though. I want to make sure they're got plenty of food. There's tons of bees. So it seems like it's going well this year.
Good,
We'll
good,
see how it goes. Yeah.
good. So Scott and Rachel, how are you doing with your 4-H project?
So we have just barely started and we do not actually have bees yet, although we have all the supplies, and Scott and our teenagers spent the last week or so working in the evenings, getting all the kits together and everything painted. So we're right on the edge of being ready for our bees.
Okay. How many 4-Hers do you have?
Right now we have 4, but we're not officially starting the 4-H project in July because that's when our year turns over. So I'll start advertising in another couple weeks probably, see if I can get some more kids interested. And we'll see. 4-H has been hit a little hard this last year. So overall our membership is pretty down from where it is. So I don't know, one more thing to make it exciting and fun, maybe get some kids involved.
Good, good. And you have a good mentor in Sara. Sara knows a lot, and she's got a lot of experience both in beekeeping and in working with 4-H. So, I'm going to put her on the spot. You just continue to press her because she's got a lot of knowledge. And
yeah, I did tell her to get bees to put it out there to to any bee guild for people catching swarms to donate for her, because that's how I got started with our 4-H bees.
Right. And maybe there's some bees out there we can find to transfer from one place to another when the time is right.
Totally.
Well, good. Welcome, and we're glad to have you in the group.
Thank you.
Let's see. Who's left? Maz, you're the mystery person. We can't see you. Can you tell us a little bit about what you're doing with bees?
Yeah, sorry, I was actually on my phone and my Zoom app doesn't allow me to access the camera. So I was actually feeding my bees right now. I bought like a few nukes, and I have one hive which I just saved this year. It got the laying worker problem also. And I had another hive which I merged both of them together. So I kind of saved them. They are doing good. They're producing honey. I harvested like 8 frames from them and left the frames back. So they are doing good. Like they are trying to fill them up. I haven't done any treatments last year, and I'm planning to do some this year. Hopefully, let's see. But I feel like the honey which I'm buying from a store and the honey I'm producing myself is really different, So because I didn't do any treatment, probably that's why.
Where are you located?
I'm in Morgan Hill.
Morgan Hill. Okay. Yeah, you're like the mystery man. You signed up and never see you, and
no, I missed a couple meetings.
we totally welcome you, but we just who are you?
Yeah, no, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Well, welcome to the club. We're happy to have you join us, and anything we can do to help, feel free to let us know. We're here to preserve bees and help beekeepers be the best that they can be.
Yeah, hopefully. Yeah, thank you so much for the. Yeah.
And then we have our mystery person who's at 1-408-761-6829. Who are you?
This is Gail. This is Gail.
Oh, hi,
Gail
Gail.
over in San Martin. Yeah. I'm having Zoom issues as well.
Where are you in San Martin?
East Hills.
Oh, okay. Because we're over on the west side behind Rocco's Market.
Yeah, she's closer to me, Randy.
Yeah,
okay.
just a hop and a skip.
How are your bees doing?
I've got 2 hives, and they seem to be quite active. Just keeping up on the feeding right now, and one thing I thought was very interesting is I have a planter over by my picnic table, and I noticed that there's some bees in that planter, and there's not that much flower in there, but there's about 5 or 6 bees, sometimes 20 bees, all in the soil of this plant. And I just thought that was very strange. So I just let them be, I guess, is what you do. Just let them be. Do you, anyone know what that's
There's-
all about?
There's
Is the soil,
probably,
is the
yeah.
soil wet, Gail?
you're Arthur, you and I are thinking the same thing.
What's that?
Is the
it-
soil wet?
Yes.
Yeah, they're thirsty.
Yeah, they're drinking it. I
Okay.
actually have a planter that I have that's just dirt in there with a drip system in it, so it just accumulates moisture, so those bees can sit in there and drink from there. So that's probably what they're doing.
Okay. I was
You know, the other-
worried about. I was worried about swarming or something.
No,
My
most likely
comment-
they're just
my-
drinking.
My comment was going to be, my mentor told me that, yeah, they'll go into the soil like that because yes, they want water, but there is also minerals in there that they're interested in. Because I have the same thing in my planter boxes. I go in there and I'll see all kinds of bees and I go, what are they doing there? Because I'm not even watering. It's just, but they're in there. They're interested in apparently in the minerals.
Oh, that's crazy. Okay.
Yeah. It's all good.
It certainly is.
Penny
we're
has a question. Penny
Pen-
has a question.
Yeah, so how close should the water source be to the hives that you set up? Should it be fairly close, or can it be like our bees like to come up to this one plant up by our house, and the hive is probably, I don't know, 100 feet or 100 yards away, like a football field away. Is that too far? Should it be closer to the hives? Or
they're gonna find the water no matter what. But just, I think the most important is do not have the water directly in front of the hive, because when they fly out, they defecate and they're not going to drink the water that they defecated in.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's easy enough.
And kind of as a thing, the kind of a little bit farther the way it is, the less intimidated you'll be to refill the water.
So just as an example, Penny, I have hives in my backyard and we have bird baths, which are probably what, Sandy, 50 feet away. And the bees will come over there and use that. I have hives in Salinas at a schoolyard, and there's a hill with trees, and on the other side of the hill, probably a quarter mile away, there's a lake, and the bees go there. So they're going to fly in a 2-mile circle. The thing is to give them water relatively closer than your neighbor's swimming pool. Right. That's kind of my rule of thumb: closer than the neighbor's swimming pool, so that they go to your water rather than your neighbor's house. Anybody else with comments tonight? Questions?
Yes, I was wondering, I've driven by groups of hives in the past, and I've seen these jars of water on top. Is that usually water, or are they just feeding them from the top? I just thought that was kind of strange.
Yeah, they're feeding them from the top.
Got it.
So to relate the experience before we close down here today, my wife and I, Sandy, we went out riding looking for, we thought, let's go out and look for raptors down in Hollister. So we chose probably the worst time of the day, which is around noontime, early afternoon, because the birds come out. The big birds come out to feed in the morning for breakfast, and they come out to feed in the evening at sundown for dinner. and the rest of the time they hide away and where it's shady and warm. But anyway, so we went riding and we went down this road, and I kept saying, no, we need to go this other way, Sandy. No, we're gonna go this way. So we rode in this road, and it's like, we're gonna come to a dead end here. So we went about 7 or 8 miles, and it's interestingly enough, at the end of that road, so far away from anything, like 7 or 8 miles, just before we went to the dead end where we had to turn around, there must have been, what, 50 hives, 50 or more hives sitting out there that somebody had found the ideal place to put them away, where almost no one would ever find them. So we discovered them, and that it was interesting. It made the day.
How are
what
they
about-
doing?
Say what?
How are they doing?
You know, it's hard to tell. I wasn't going to get out. I didn't have any protective wear, and I'm not like Arthur. I don't like to go out there and get stung a lot. So in passing by, it looked pretty quiet, but there were a lot of bees out there, and there was lots of trees. Interestingly enough, they were not feeding any of those bees. So that was
Or
pretty.
that you could see, because they could be in hive
Yeah,
feeders.
yeah, it could have been. Yeah, there were doubles brood
Oh.
boxes, so they might have
Oh.
been feeding inside. Yeah, but that's a good point.
Jamie, how are your hives doing?
They're doing fine. The hive that we just got from Arthur is, we put a super on it a week or 2 ago because it had already filled out the bottom box. And then the other hive, the hive that's always been a killer hive, is continuing to be a just phenomenal. But I've already got a super full of honey off of it. I mean, I haven't harvested it, but I had to put a second super on. I mean, I'm getting to where I have to, I'm not sure how I'm going to get much more on that hive. I'm not tall enough. So it's doing really well.
One of the things that we like to do in the newsletter is that we have an interview with some of the new people. And so that we get to know a little bit more about each other and things that we have in common. So if you would like to volunteer, I know that there's several people here that I have interviewed before, but if you are a new person and you'd like to raise your hand and be the interviewer coming up for the June newsletter, I would appreciate it. Anybody want to raise your hand? Ah, come on.
Well, Penny, yeah, Penny will do it. There you go.
Penny, yay.
Thank you, Penny. I will contact you. Okay.
And I guess last but not least, I should comment about my hives, right? So I got some honey out of my hives. Big problem is for me right now in the backyard is where the bees are. We thought we would put down wood chipping, and that would hold the weeds down. We were wrong. The weeds are a real nuisance now. In fact, I think they're worse than they were before. So we got them cut down the other day. I've been wandering around trying to get to the hives. They seem to be doing well. I opened a couple of them, and I have more bees than I ever imagined would be possible. So overall, the backyard hive is doing well. The hives we have down at Rancho Cielo. Arthur, how many hives did we start out with there? Do you remember?
I think when I first went down there were like 4 or 5 active hives.
Yeah, but then we put more down there. Right now, there's
I wasn't counting. I was just unloading boxes.
Yeah. Well, anyway, we have 11 hives right now. I caught a swarm a couple of weeks ago, and it seems to be doing just okay. It was a swarm that I found that I got called about that was sitting on the ground, which to me is never a good sign because there's a problem with the queen. But I did get him back into a box. The queen is laying kind of in a spotty manner. But the other hives, the other 11 hives are just booming. They're doing great. There's lots of forage. There's lots of water down there. I just need to go down and get some honey because the students are going to be graduating in another week and a half, and I need to get honey for them as part of their graduation package. Overall, things are good.
Randy, I had two things real quick. I just wanted to reiterate to everyone that with Sara and Jamie and Steve was nice enough to come out and help us also on Sunday. The class hives that we set up in April have kind of turned into observation hives. So Jamie and I and also Sara, we're putting together a guide, and we're talking about what we're seeing in those 4 hives that we established for the April class. So we've already encountered a wide range of, there's some that have built up really quickly. There's one that swarmed. There's one that had varroa. So there's a lot going on between those 4 hives. So if you have anything similar, if you have any questions, that's sort of what the hives are there for. The hives are located, for those of you who don't know, in Morgan Hill. So if you want to be climate specific, it's the Morgan Hill climate. So today we had, 15 to 20 mile an hour wind gusts, and the bees were looking for ropes to get back to the hives because it was so windy. But that's the purpose, is to be helpful with not only what we're seeing in those 4 hives, but also if you have any related types of issues, please contact us or call Randy, especially after 9 o'clock. And then lastly, I'd like to add, I discovered a couple of years ago a really inexpensive dearth meter. If you buy a hummingbird feeder and you put the hummingbird feeder out this time of year, once your bees start going for the hummingbird feeder, they need to be fed because the sugar concentration typically if you buy the premix for hummingbirds is so much lower. It's even lower, I believe, than 1-to-1 sugar syrup. So if you see your bees on that, then your bees are looking for food. So it's a good visual clue, especially if you have hives in your backyard. So just something to think about. They're like I said, you can get the plastic ones for around $12, but it's a good thing to have during the summer months.
And I guess I would add, don't call before 9 because that's when all the spammers call too. So you'll probably get a busy signal if you call my number before 9.
Sometimes you can get them at the dollar store too.
Yes, you can. And I want to give a shout out again to Arthur and Sara and Jamie for the great job they're doing with the education. When I turned it over to them, this was the first try tonight at putting together these programs with visuals and videos and all. And I just think it came off really well. And I'm really happy. I'm really excited. I'm really grateful for the work and the effort that they're putting in for doing this. So thank you to you. And I hope all of you will applaud that because it was a lot of effort that went into it. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
And if there's nothing more, I'm going to say it's time for us to check out. And my last comment is for our June general meeting. Again, I'm waiting to have a final confirmation from Ellen Topitzhofer, who is a technician working at Oregon State University's apiculture program. And her tentative topic right now is to talk about bee banking, which is the technique of actually queen banking, which is the technique of gathering queens so that you have enough of them when spring comes and you're ready to start populating and doing splits. So we'll go from there and look for your newsletter. I'll have more details in there about it. If nothing else, I wish you a good evening, good beekeeping, have fun.
Good night.
Right.
And with that, we close off. 3, 2, 1. Good
Hello.
night.